Welcome back, everyone. Today we're really diving deep into Mindset, the New Psychology of Success by Carol Dweck.
Oh, this is a good one.
It is, right. Have you read it?
I have, yeah. It's pretty fascinating.
It is. Like, how is it that some people just seem to thrive on challenges while others, just totally hit a wall?
Right.
Well, Dweck says it all comes down to mindset, like literally the beliefs we hold about our abilities.
Very true. It's like the mental framework we use to approach, well, pretty much everything.
Exactly. And she breaks it down into two main categories, the growth mindset and the fixed mindset.
And it's not like you're stuck in one forever.
Right, right. And we'll get to all that. But first, let's dig into this fixed mindset thing. Dweck kicks off the book with this really vivid story about her sixth grade teacher, Mrs. Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this teacher, she actually arranged the entire class by IQ score.
Can you imagine?
I know, right? Like, talk about pressure.
It's the ultimate fixed mindset scenario, isn't it?
Totally. And Dweck even talks about having stomach aches every day because of it.
Yeah, I remember that. I mean, it's like your worth as a student, as a person even, is being judged based on this one fixed measure.
And it makes you wonder, how many kids in that class just gave up, thinking, well, I guess I'm just not smart.
That's the danger of the fixed mindset, right? It can really limit your potential.
Absolutely. And Dweck argues that wasn't just applied to academics. She uses the example of John McEnroe, the tennis legend.
Oh, yeah. Notorious for his on-court meltdowns.
Exactly. But he was obviously super talented, right?
Oh, absolutely. One of the greats.
So what's the deal?
Well, Dweck says it was classic fixed mindset behavior. McEnroe couldn't handle the idea of losing, of not being the best.
So instead of, learning from his mistakes, he'd blame the refs, the court, even the weather.
Anything but himself, right? Like his talent should have been enough to guarantee him victory every time.
It's almost like he was afraid to put in the work to improve, because that would mean admitting he wasn't perfect to begin with.
And you know what's even crazier? Dweck says that after his best friend beat him in an early round of a tournament, McEnroe actually wanted his friend to lose the final.
Whoa, seriously.
Yeah, like his ego just couldn't handle it.
It really shows how that fixed mindset can be so, so destructive.
And tragically, this need to constantly prove yourself can have really high stakes. Dweck talks about Bernard Lauzot, the famous French chef.
Oh, yeah, the one who took his own life after his restaurant lost a couple of points in a rating system.
Exactly. It's like his entire identity, his worth, was tied to this external validation. And when it wavered, even slightly, he felt like a complete failure.
And it's heartbreaking because you realize it's not just about, perfectionism. It's about feeling trapped by this belief that you have a fixed amount of talent or intelligence.
And any setback feels like proof that you're just not good enough.
It's a scary thought, isn't it? And it's not just adults who fall into this trap. Dweck found that even seventh graders with fixed mindsets were more likely to cheat on tests after failing.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it's like they've internalized this message that if you're not naturally brilliant, you might as well cut corners.
It makes you wonder about the pressure kids are under these days.
It's a lot, and Dweck even touches on this whole college admissions frenzy where some parents become obsessed with prestige, getting their kids into the right school.
I can see that. It's all about that external validation, right?
Exactly. She tells the story of Sandy, whose parents were fixated on her getting into Harvard. It didn't even matter what Sandy was interested in. It was all about the label.
Yeah, that's rough. Because it completely misses the point of education, doesn't it?
Totally. It's not about the name on the diploma. It's about the learning process, about growth.
And that's where the growth mindset comes in, right?
Exactly. And this is where things get really interesting because the growth mindset is all about seeing challenges not as threats, but as opportunities.
Opportunities to learn, to grow, to get better.
Right. So tell me more about this core belief of the growth mindset. What's it all about?
Well, it's all about believing that your abilities are, well, not set in stone. They're valuable, like muscles you can train.
Okay, I like that analogy.
And, instead of asking, am I smart enough, you ask, how can I get smarter?
That's a huge shift in perspective.
It is. And Dweck shares this incredible story about a student named Jimmy who, well, he was kind of a turned-off, low-effort kid. But when he was introduced to the growth mindset, everything changed.
Really?
He went from avoiding challenges to seeking them out. Like he realized he had the power to improve. And that was just incredibly motivating for him.
That's so cool. So it's not like he suddenly became a genius overnight, right?
No, it was about understanding that he wasn't limited by his current abilities. He had the potential to grow.
And Dweck really emphasizes this idea of the brain being like a muscle.
The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
I've heard that before, but is there actual scientific evidence for that?
Oh, absolutely. It's called neuroplasticity. Our brains are constantly rewiring themselves based on our experiences.
So it's not just a metaphor, it's actual science.
Yeah, and even in cases of severe injury, like with Christopher Reeve, we see this incredible capacity for the brain to adapt.
You mean after his accident?
Yes, he was paralyzed, right? But through intense physical therapy, he actually started to regain some movement.
Wow.
And years later, brain scans showed that his brain was sending signals to his body again, like it had rewired itself in response to his efforts.
That's incredible. It really shows that we're capable of so much more than we often believe.
Exactly. And it's not just about individual effort either. Dweck talks about how the way we praise children can really impact their mindsets.
Like how we talk to them about their abilities.
Yes, she found that praising kids for effort, rather than just for being smart, led to more resilient learners.
Makes sense.
Because when you're always told you're brilliant, you become afraid to make mistakes, afraid to look dumb.
You don't want to risk losing that label.
Right. But kids who are praised for effort, they're more likely to embrace challenges, to see setbacks as opportunities to learn.
It's about valuing the process, not just the outcome.
Exactly. And Dweck highlights some truly inspiring teachers who embodied this growth mindset in their classroom.
Oh yeah, like Marva Collins, who worked with so-called disadvantaged kids in Chicago.
Yes. And she completely transformed their lives. I mean, these were kids who were struggling with basic skills, and she had them reading Shakespeare, discussing philosophy.
It sounds like she created this amazing environment where they felt safe to take risks, to push themselves intellectually.
And that's key, right? Creating that space where learning is valued, where mistakes are seen as part of the process.
Absolutely. And she wasn't the only one. Dweck also talks about Dorothy DeLay, who was a legendary violin instructor at Juilliard.
Oh, I've heard of her. She taught some of the greatest violinists of our time.
Right. And unlike her mentor, who believed that talent was like inborn, DeLay believed that anyone could develop musical ability with enough dedication.
So two very different teachers, but both fostering this growth mindset in their students.
It really shows that it's not about a specific method, it's about the underlying belief in human potential.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've seen how these mindsets play out in individual stories, but Dweck takes this even further, right? How do they apply to like relationships, business, those bigger arenas of life?
Oh, that's where it gets really interesting. Because these mindsets become lenses through which we view not just ourselves, but also our interactions with others.
And that's where we'll dive in next time.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we've seen how these fixed and growth mindsets shape our individual stories, but how do they play out in the bigger picture?
Well, it's like these mindsets, they don't just impact our own thoughts and actions. They actually shape how we interact with other people.
Right.
And how we navigate all sorts of complex situations.
So let's start with relationships.
Okay, sure.
I'm curious, like, how do these mindsets affect the way people handle conflict in a relationship?
Well, think about it this way. You have a couple, and they're having an argument, someone with a fixed mindset. They might immediately see that conflict as a sign that something's wrong.
Oh, interesting.
Like a sign of incompatibility, a fundamental flaw in the relationship, or even in their partner.
So instead of seeing it as like, a normal part of being in a relationship, they see it as like a sign that things are just irrevocably broken.
Yeah, exactly.
Huh.
And it triggers, that fear of being wrong or not being good enough.
Right.
They might get defensive, start blaming, or even just shut down completely.
Oh, I see.
All to avoid, confronting the possibility that maybe the relationship needs some work.
That sounds exhausting.
It can be, yeah.
So how does a growth mindset approach conflict differently?
Someone with a growth mindset might see that same argument as an opportunity,
Oh,
a chance to learn more about their partner,
okay.
to maybe develop some new communication skills, or to figure out, how to compromise more effectively.
So it's less about like winning the argument and more about understanding each other and finding solutions together.
Exactly, yeah.
I like that.
And, this plays out in how couples handle just like everyday stuff too,
Oh, interesting.
not just the big blow-up fights.
Okay.
Dweck actually tells this story about Janet and Phil, who had very different ideas about, household chores.
Uh-huh.
Janet, she expected a 50-50 split,
Makes sense.
while Phil, he just kind of naturally fell into a more traditional division of labor without even really talking about it.
Classic recipe for resentment, right?
Yeah, you totally.
Like neither of them is wrong, but they have these unspoken expectations that are causing friction.
And that's where that growth mindset could be so helpful,
Right.
Instead of each person just digging in their heels and defending their position,
Yeah.
they could approach this situation with a little bit of curiosity.
Like, okay, so we have different ideas about how this should work. Let's talk about it.
Exactly.
And see if we can find a way to make it work for both of us.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And, Dweck also talks about how these fixed mindsets, They can lead us to label our partners.
Oh, like putting them in a box.
Yeah, adjusting their qualities is unchanging. You
Yeah.
hear it all the time,
Oh,
right? Oh, he's just so selfish, or she's always been disorganized.
Right, right.
And these labels, whether we say them out loud or not, they create these boxes, these limitations that prevent us from seeing our partners as, people who can grow and change.
So we're basically holding them hostage to our initial judgments.
Yeah, even if they're actively trying to improve or do things differently.
It's like we fell in love with a fixed image of them instead of the actual evolving person.
That's a really good point, yeah.
Wow. So it's important to be with someone who has a growth mindset.
It can definitely help because relationships, they're going to be tested, right?
Right.
You need to have that shared belief in each other's ability to, work through stuff, to learn from mistakes, to actually become better together.
What's this?
And, another way these mindsets show up in relationships is through blame.
Oh, blame.
When something goes wrong, the focus immediately shifts to who's at fault.
Instead of
Trying to understand the situation and, finding solutions together.
Got it. So it's like someone has to be right and someone has to be wrong.
Exactly.
And that creates what, like a defensive kind of environment?
Yeah, a climate of defensiveness and resentment,
Uh-huh.
which makes it almost impossible to actually address, the underlying issue.
Oh, I see.
Remember Brenda and Jack from the book?
Yeah.
They were having this argument and they just started mentally, throwing these negative traits at each other.
Oh, why?
It's like they were solidifying these fixed beliefs they had about each other and about the relationship itself.
Like they were trapped in this cycle of negativity.
Exactly.
That's fair.
It highlights how insidious that fixed mindset can be.
Right.
It's not just about individual limitations. It can really poison a whole relationship.
Wow. Yeah, that's powerful.
And, Dweck even touches on the Clinton-Lewinsky scandal.
Okay, but we're not going to get into politics, right?
No.
Okay.
But she uses it to illustrate how Hillary Clinton faced this major life choice.
Right.
Did she see Bill's actions as, defining him as a person, as proof that he was incapable of changing?
Right.
Or could she believe in his capacity for growth and change?
That's a big one.
It is, and it raises this question, can people truly change?
Right.
A fixed mindset would say, no, once a cheater, always a cheater.
But a growth mindset, you're saying it leaves open that possibility for transformation.
Yeah, for learning from past mistakes.
It's a more hopeful outlook, for sure.
It is.
So, okay, we've seen how these fixed mindsets can really create havoc in relationships. But let's shift gears a bit.
Okay.
How does all of this apply to the business world?
Oh, there are definitely parallels.
Oh, good.
Dweck argues that fixed mindsets can be particularly toxic in leadership positions.
Oh, how so?
She uses Enron as a prime example,
Oh, yeah, that was a huge
It
scandal.
was, and they were obsessed with talent,
Really?
individual brilliance, but at the expense of teamwork and ethical behavior.
So it was like everyone was trying to prove they were the smartest person in the room instead of working together towards a common goal.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's what ultimately led to their downfall.
Well, it definitely contributed.
Huh. So are there examples of companies that, successfully implemented a growth mindset?
Dweck contrasts Enron with companies like IBM and Xerox,
Okay.
who, they faced some major challenges.
Uh-huh.
But they were able to turn things around by fostering this culture of growth.
So what did they do differently? What did that look like in practice?
Well, they emphasized collaboration,
Okay.
learning from mistakes, being adaptable.
Right.
Lou Gerstner, who led IBM's transformation, he really encouraged employees to take risks,
Oh, interesting.
knowing that failure was just an opportunity for growth.
So he shifted the culture from, we're the best to how can we get better?
Ex-
It sounds like humility was a key ingredient there.
It really was.
They weren't afraid to admit that they didn't have all the answers.
Right.
And they were willing to learn from anyone, regardless of their position.
Yeah, that's important.
And what about Xerox?
Oh, Anne Mulcahy, she steered Xerox through a major financial crisis.
Wow.
And she actually took classes.
Really?
Yeah, to learn more about the company's finances.
So she was walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly.
That's pretty inspiring.
It is. And her leadership wasn't about proving she was the smartest person in the room.
Right.
It was about doing everything she could to help the company thrive.
And that's a great example of the growth mindset in action, right?
Absolutely.
It's not just about, individual achievement. It's
Mhm.
about creating a culture where everyone feels empowered to contribute and to grow.
Exactly.
But Dweck also talks about the potential downsides of too much praise for ability, right?
Yeah, she uses this phrase, the praise generation hits the workforce,
Oh, interesting.
to describe a potential challenge.
Okay.
All these young people who've grown up being told they're brilliant, they might struggle when they face the realities of the working world,
Because it's not always easy.
right? And they might have this expectation that success should just come easily.
Uh-huh.
And when it doesn't, they get discouraged.
Or give up.
Yeah, they might be less resilient,
Okay.
less willing to put in the hard work required to really master a skill,
Right.
and more likely to jump ship when things get tough.
So it's like a mismatch between their expectations and the reality that, most meaningful achievements require grit,
Uh-huh.
dedication, and that willingness to learn from setbacks.
Exactly.
Dweck's research even found that managers with growth mindsets actually made significantly better decisions
Oh, that's interesting.
than their fixed mindset counterparts.
Hmm.
What was the difference in their approach?
Well, growth-minded managers, they were more open to feedback.
Oh.
They actively fought out new information, and they created these collaborative environments
Yeah.
where their team members felt safe to, express different opinions.
Okay.
Fixed mindset managers, on the other hand, they were more concerned with appearing competent
I see.
and avoiding criticism.
Makes sense that a leader who's afraid to be wrong would stifle innovation
Yeah,
and create a culture of fear rather than a culture of learning.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered relationships in business, but Dweck's research also has some profound implications for parenting.
It does, and that's what we'll explore next.
Okay, so we've seen how these mindsets affect us personally and professionally, but is it possible to actually change our mindset? Like, can we shift from fixed to growth if we want to?
Dweck is pretty adamant that we have a choice. It's not like we're stuck with one mindset forever.
That's good to hear.
It's not easy, though, right?
Right.
It takes effort, a willingness to really challenge those deeply ingrained beliefs.
So where do we even begin?
Well, she suggests starting by becoming aware of that fixed mindset voice that we all have.
You mean like that inner critic?
Exactly, that little voice that pops up when things get tough,
Oh, I know that voice all too well.
It tells you you're not good enough,
Yep, yeah.
that you're going to fail. You should just give up.
It can be so discouraging.
It can, but the key is to recognize it for what it is.
Oh, which is?
It's just a limiting belief.
Oh, okay.
It's not a fact.
Oh, I see.
So when you hear that voice, try to pause and ask yourself, is this really true? Is this actually helping me?
So it's like instead of just blindly accepting those negative thoughts, we can actually question them.
Yeah, and reframe them.
Okay, how do we do that?
Well, affirmations can be helpful.
Oh,
For example, if you find yourself thinking, I'm terrible at math,
right. Which I do sometimes.
you could reframe that as, you know what? I'm willing to put in the effort to improve my math skills.
So it's about shifting the focus from like judging yourself to embracing the process of learning.
Exactly.
It's like a mental self-defense technique,
I like that.
arming ourselves against those automatic negative thoughts.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
But it's not just about changing our thoughts, right?
No, it's about changing our behaviors, too.
We have to take action.
You have to take action, step outside of your comfort zone, push yourself to grow.
So, like, if I'm afraid of public speaking, I shouldn't just sit around thinking positive thoughts.
No,
I should actually get out there and start practicing giving presentations.
exactly.
Many steps, right.
You could start by maybe presenting to a small group of friends or colleagues, and then work your way up to larger audiences.
So each time I face that fear, I'm proving to myself that I can do it.
You're building confidence through experience.
It's not just about willpower, it's about actually doing the things that scare us.
Yeah, and each time you succeed, you reinforce those growth mindset beliefs, like, I can learn new things, I can handle challenges.
Dweck also talks about the importance of, like, our social circle, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like the people we surround ourselves with.
Yeah, the people we spend time with, they have a huge impact on our mindset.
So if you're constantly around people who are reinforcing those fixed mindset beliefs, it's going to be that much harder to break free.
It is.
So we might want to be more intentional about like who we're spending our time with.
Yeah, seek out people who believe in you, who inspire you to grow, who celebrate your efforts, not just your accomplishments.
You mentioned neuroplasticity earlier, the idea that our brains can actually change. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, neuroplasticity is one of the most exciting discoveries in neuroscience.
How so?
It basically means that our brains, they're not fixed. They're constantly changing and adapting in response to our experiences.
So every time we learn something new, we're actually changing the physical structure of our brain.
Exactly.
That's mind-blowing.
It is.
So even if we've always struggled with something, like our brains can still change.
Absolutely.
Wow.
There's this study where researchers, they use brain imaging to look at the brains of people who are learning to juggle.
Okay.
And they found that the areas of the brain associated with motor skills actually grew in size as the participants became more proficient jugglers.
So our brains are truly valuable.
They are.
It's like we have the power to shape our own brains through our actions and our efforts.
That's a great way to put it.
You also mentioned something called the Brainology program.
Oh, yes.
Can you tell us more about that?
So Dweck and her colleagues, they developed this program called Brainology to teach students about the growth mindset
Okay.
and neuroplasticity.
Cool.
They use all these fun, engaging methods like animations and interactive games to help kids understand that their brains are like muscles.
I love that analogy.
It's a good one.
So they're basically teaching kids that they have the power to change their own brains.
Exactly.
And what were the results?
The results are really impressive.
Oh, good.
Students who participate in Brainology, they show improvements in their grades, their motivation to learn, and even their resilience in the face of challenges.
It's amazing how simply changing our beliefs about learning can have such a huge impact.
It really is.
Wow.
It highlights the importance of, really incorporating these growth mindset principles into education.
Right.
Imagine a world where, kids are taught from a young age that their abilities are not fixed,
Yeah.
that they have the power to learn and grow through effort and dedication.
That would be pretty amazing.
It would.
Well, this whole deep dive has been so eye-opening.
Good. I'm glad.
And I'm definitely feeling inspired to cultivate more of a growth mindset in my own life.
That's great to hear.
What about you?
Yeah, me too. It's a constant process, Wade.
It is.
But Dweck's book, it really provides us with a framework for understanding human potential
Right.
and for creating a world where everyone feels empowered to learn, to grow, to achieve their dreams.
That's beautiful.
It's something to strive for, that's for sure.
It is, and it all starts with our mindset.
It does.
Well, thanks for guiding us through this amazing exploration of mindset.
My pleasure.
And to all of our listeners out there, remember, you have the power to choose a growth mindset.
You do.
Embrace the challenges, celebrate the effort, and never stop learning.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Until next time.